Dust off your jerseys, grab your Waukee caps. Got the whole team ready, no turning back. From the hardwood floors to the diamond bright, we're here to talk sports all day and night. Yeah, it's a sports show. From the opening tip to the final, we're with you.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another live episode of Catch Up with Cody podcast. I'm your host, as always, Cody. We have another special guest this week, Kevin from the Lions Grid. He was on, I believe, one of my early episodes of this live podcasting, so I'm happy he is back. We were just talking before we got on air. We have a lot of sports to talk about. You know, I made this outline for him, and we were kind of looking at it, and I'm like, okay, this is a lot to talk about. And that was just over the weekend, and we have so much more to talk about. So, Kevin, how are you? How was your 4th of July? And thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Cody. Always good to catch in and catch up with Cody, as the show says. So, no, 4th of July was good. Went up to Houghton Lake in Michigan and got to spend some time with my grandma and cooked out and all that good stuff for the 4th of July festivities. And then came back down here and, another week with a lot of sports news going on. So exciting times for sports fans here in Metro Detroit. Lots to talk about.
Yes, for sure. Lots to talk about. As you guys can kind of see, I have my USA t-shirt on. Currently, while we are doing this podcast, USA is down 2-1 at halftime against Belgium. I'm not a big soccer guy, but from what I see in this game, like these two teams they're fast. It's just nonstop. So, I believe this is the first time they're down a goal. So we'll have to see how the USA can do. Just looking at the stadium and everything from a non-soccer fan, that looks so cool. I mean, that'd be cool to be down there. They even showed like the breakdown of each state celebrating and everything. And from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, this is like the Super Bowl for soccer fans. So, Kevin, how much have you watched? How much of I know you said earlier before we came on that you used to play soccer. So, from a soccer point of view and a soccer fan, what you got here for us for the World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I watch a lot of the World Cup when it happens, going back to college and even before then, but then also the Olympics. Like these big like international competitions for soccer are really the things that I enjoy. To an extent, it does remind me a little bit of like what college football used to be. Like you had all of the things going on with like Michigan State and, Michigan, like the tradition and like the different, there's like a culture to it, right? Like each team has like their own chants, their own things they do. And you see that on the international stage, I really like what Norway does when they do their row thing that they do, and seeing that happen like across the stadium. The closest thing that I can compare that to from my experience is like at Michigan State at Spartan Stadium when you do the go green, go white across Spartan Stadium. Like it's really cool to be part of that group and to be part of that. So it's it definitely seems like it's an electrifying environment there at the World Cup. And it seems like whether the game's being played in the US or up in Canada or down in Mexico, it seems like all of the host cities, whatever teams are playing, definitely is a lot of energy down there. So it seems, just as a fan of sports in general, and then again, someone who kind of casually follows soccer, it's definitely wouldn't mind going and checking it out because it definitely seems like it is an experience. And then also, hi Jamie, I see you there in the chat. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, yeah, it would be really cool to get down there. But I mean, even like these other countries, like they're really traveling. Like there's some of these games that I've seen that it's kind of like a home court, but for the other team. So, obviously with it being in the US, there's going to be more USA fans than there is obviously other countries. But no, I think overall it has been, from what I've been watching, it's been good. I obviously I want the US to go on to the next round, but I kind of think I'm going to tune into more of the rounds outside of even if the US doesn't win tonight. So I think I might be a international soccer fan as far as the World Cup. So every 4 years, they can count me as a fan of this sport.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten into the Premier League or anything like that. I am a fan of Ted Lasso, so I get the itch every once in a while. But definitely these international competitions, when it does take that world stage and you just have so much extra focus on it, it definitely hasn't disappointed. You've seen a lot of really good games. I mean, there have been a lot of games that have been scores with 0-0, but even in those games, like there is in those draws that happened in the group stage, there was still a lot of things going on, despite there not being a lot going on in the score line. So definitely been interesting, and something that, again, like you said, I hope the U.S. is able to break through here in the second half. I think they were the underdogs coming into this game, just because when it comes to football, as the rest of the world calls it, the U.S. is definitely not. A lot of our best athletes are going into other sports, so we're not. We don't have the same level of commitment to soccer as the rest of the world. But it is good to see us here, making it into the round of 16 and hopefully making it into the round of 8. But we'll see what happens here in the second half against Belgium.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. So I'm gonna have to, when we get off of this, there should still be a little time left that I can catch the end of the game for sure. But let's move on to some other news. You are the football podcast, so we're gonna start with a little bit of NFL news. Actually, what I saw today is Terrion Arnold has cleared waivers and teams are ready to look to picking him up. I don't get it. This story, and
it's a crazy situation.
This story does not make any sense. It went from talked about in the beginning of the year to then it went away to then he's looking at a life sentence to we release him to now he's probably going back on the NFL field. So what have you seen, heard, and what do you get from the story? Like, is this a major thing or is this kind of like a just another NFL thing where it just kind of goes away and nothing ever comes of it?
It's really hard to say, because even if, whatever happens from a legal standpoint, there's always going to be that potential for him to face some sort of repercussions from the league, even if he's not convicted of a crime. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting, especially for the Lions, because obviously he's cleared waivers now. Of course, he could potentially go to another team and contribute this year. I know during last week's episode, you guys were talking about the potential of him going to Kansas City, which would not be a great thing to see, especially if he does end up contributing there. But even beyond that, from like the Lions' perspective, he was on his rookie contract, and whether or not he had, whether the Lions have to pay out the remainder of that contract is going to be dependent on what kind of happens with how the league rules on this. Like if they, end up deciding that because of what is alleged to happen, that he has violated, his original agreement, that's terms to go ahead and not pay out the remainder of his salary. I mean, that would essentially be money back into the war chest for the Lions, which would be helpful as now we find ourselves in a position where, it would be nice to add another corner.
Yes.
Because we find ourselves missing out there. And the secondary was already kind of on wobbly standings. And Cody, I know you were talking about it last week too. The last couple of seasons has definitely been like, it's been attrition. Like we have just had to continue to be next man up. And now we're not even in the season. It's not like people are getting hurt in the games and we're just running out of bodies. We're starting to lose starters before games are even being played.
Yes.
Which does not leave you very optimistic when you're looking at a part of the defense that was already kind of a question mark heading into the season. And we haven't even started preseason yet. So
yeah, and it kind of goes with what I've been telling people. Like, everybody's been saying that this Lions team has an easy schedule, and I think we've talked about it before. Like on paper, yeah, that's fine. It might be easy, but if you're looking at it right now, all this offseason stuff is making the schedule look harder and harder.
Yeah.
And so it's like, again, you can't take any of these teams for granted already on paper. And if you don't have a secondary, I mean, even if you don't have a defense wins championships. That's what that whole thing is about. Defense wins championships. we don't even have a defense. So, and like you said, we're going into still the off season. It's not like we're a week in, 2 weeks in, we're getting players hurt. No, we don't even have the start of the season here,
Yeah.
and it's already looking like this easy schedule is going to be difficult, especially against these tough teams like Buffalo, like all your in division, rivals. It's not going to be easy. So I'm hoping that this is kind of a wake up call, not only for the fans, but also for like the Lions in that locker room. Like, the guys that we have right now have to step up, and it has to be next man up. I know there's, like the corner position that we've been talking about. Like, I hate to say it, but the guys that are on that roster right now for that position, I couldn't even tell you who they are. So hopefully they can make a name for themselves and kind of, obviously prove people wrong. But yeah, this Lions team, it almost feels like we're going in the direction of back to the same old Lions, which I hope not, because it was nice seeing winning football here in Detroit for once in pretty much a lifetime almost.
Yeah, I think the good news is that I don't think we are. I don't think we're heading to a world in which the same old Lions come back. They do, to your point, have an excellent opportunity ahead of them because of the strength of schedule that they have. So obviously they have to go play the games because, just because you have a weak opponent on paper doesn't necessarily guarantee you a win, especially in the NFL. But the point is definitely valid. There are reasons to be concerned with this team. And those fears aren't going to be put to rest until it's Sunday and we start seeing them go out there and stacking some wins. So it's definitely there's plenty of reason, I think, to be sort of cautious as we head into the season, but at the same time, it's that balance, right, of finding, you need to have that reasonable cautiousness with the Lions. You don't want to get so too far down the road where you're talking Super Bowl. But at the same time, there is a good opportunity for them as they head into the season. So, it's one of those things where we won't know the outcome until the games are played, but certainly not a great start as we look to get this season underway. So,
No, not at all. And actually, I put out a post, I believe, from last week, talking about, like, I think these first two games of the season are not going to decide, obviously, our season, but, you're playing Buffalo and the Saints first 2 weeks. That's obviously your lowest and your highest team. Like I said, some people have been like, that's not going to determine your whole season. No, it's not. But with this banged up team, it could be a coin toss for any of these games. So I really hope that Detroit can figure it out, especially missing the playoffs last year. Like, I think this is the year that we need to just get back into the playoffs and kind of remember how playoff football was. Not that we've been missing it for forever, but just get back into that system, with the new coordinators and everything like that. I think there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on in Detroit as far as the Lions. So hopefully they can figure their season out this year. Because missing the playoffs last year was really disappointing.
Yeah, I think a big thing with the Lions is, so far they haven't been willing to like make that big like swing for the fences move. I know we'll be talking about the Tigers at some point this season. And the Tigers added $80 million in payroll this offseason. Now, certainly we can look at what happened, and the outcome has not been as good as we had hoped heading into the season for them. But arguably, Scott Harris and the Tigers, like they took a shot. They tried to go ahead and win the season, and it hasn't panned out as of yet. But they at least tried. The Lions are definitely a team where they have been, rewarding players that have come up through the Lions organization with big contracts. And they're kind of like sticking to their guns and trying to make sure that like this is the Lions system and we're going to make this work. And they haven't been willing to, go out there and make any of those splashy pickups. They didn't go after Myles Garrett, or if they may have gone after him, but obviously they didn't land Myles Garrett or any of those other big moves that have been talked about. So I think it's important for them to get back to the playoffs this season to, help kind of stabilize the ship and show that, hey, this can be a winning formula. They're going to have to find a way to do that. Now, thankfully, again, they're in a position where they have an opportunity, I think, to do that. But whether it be through this off the field shenanigans with Terrion Arnold or like potential injuries that pop up. And right, this can happen to any team. It's not just the
Correct.
Lions. But at the moment you start to stack some key roster losses, your schedule goes from being favorable to being unmanageable rather quickly if the right people or the wrong people get injured. So we'll have to see how things shake out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like you said, I mean, with injuries, like that already derailed us a couple seasons in a row. So it's like if we're already, you know, down on the totem pole of people, like eventually we're going to hit rock bottom when we don't want to hit rock bottom. So, you did talk about the Tigers, and I want to talk about them here. When I did write this, they were 4-6 over the last 10 games. They swept. This is what confuses the hell out of me is how inconsistent they are. So they lose the series to Houston. They sweep the Yankees, and then at the time I wrote this, they lost to the Rangers 10-4. I believe they ended up winning that series.
They did end up winning the series, yeah.
But it's like, what are we doing? Like, we're at the high of the highs with sweeping the Yankees and the low of the lows with losing a series to Houston. Like, there's got to be something that either changes, like, and I've said this before, bring up these young prospects that are sitting in the farm system. Like, bring them in, try to see if we can make a playoff push. I know we're only 10 games under 500 now, so we're crawling our way up there. But, like, the only real person that's doing good is McGonigal, which I'm going to say it is probably the only player in Detroit sports in the last, 10 years that is actually worth the contract we've given him. I know it's only his first year, obviously, but he's showing it. He's showing it on the field, like both sides of the ball. He's a good player. He's young, and I think he's going to do really good here in Detroit. Probably in about 10 years from now, we'll probably end up trading him because that's just the Detroit way. But, how much have you been watching of the baseball? Like, do you think these guys are going to make the playoffs, or do you think this is going to be a rebuild year and then hopefully turn it around, obviously, with some more off-field shenanigans with Skubal? It seems like all of our teams are dealing with some off the field stuff.
There are a lot of big storylines going on behind the scenes for like every Detroit team right now, and it's definitely, it's interesting. I think this Tigers team is definitely frustrating, right? Like as you said, they've had some really high highs, they've had some really low lows, and the only thing that they've been consistently doing is being inconsistent.
Yes.
And we do have 3 All-Stars. You already talked about McGonigal, making it to an All-Star game as in his rookie season, one of the few Tigers to do that. Dylan Dingler is also there, and then Riley Green also. So like those 3 guys definitely well-deserved, and they have definitely been bright spots for this Tigers roster. And the nice thing about them too is, they're all self-developed guys, right? Like they came through the Tigers organization, and like they, we didn't bring them in through free agency or didn't trade. They are all sort of grown internally. I think the frustrating thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is that, Scott Harris and the Tigers, Chris Ilitch definitely wanted to go after it this season. He invested, like I said, $80 million they spent in payroll this offseason. And the Valdez signing and the Verlander signing, it wasn't just like it was internal optimism about what this Tigers team could be. Like it was across the board with MLB media that this rotation was going to be top 2. Like they weren't the best rotation in MLB, but everyone thought they would be, like the second best rotation, and it just hasn't panned out. And I think the difficult thing is like there's definitely time we've seen the offense kind of wake itself up a little bit here. The first time Gleyber Torres got hurt, that was like a huge blow to us. But like now that he's back on the DL again, we've been doing better this time. And I think that actually might be an interesting piece for us at the trade deadline, because if we can have a sustained offense without Torres, he would definitely be an interesting trade piece because, he's on the last year of his contract. And that could be a good piece to go out and get maybe a bullpen arm or something like that if we do want to try and make this push for the playoffs. But there is very little because of the start they had to the season. There's a very small window of error that they're dealing with. They are behind the ball. They need to win more series and to continue to stack these series wins. The good news is that a lot of these teams that are ahead of them in the playoffs, like they are playing directly. So like if they get those series wins against them, it's going to help lift them up in the standings.
Gotcha.
But I mean, they have to come out here and basically, have a positive win percentage throughout the remainder of the year to have a chance to get to those 80 plus wins that they're going to need to get into a wild card slot. You know, potentially the White Sox could slow down and maybe they could have a shot at the Central, but I think realistically, they only have like a 1 in 5 chance of making the playoffs right now. And so it's a chance,
Yeah.
but I definitely don't feel confident in them making it. And I think, Cody, I think the big thing that it does is really, I think the most like crucial decision for Scott Harris is his time as the GM in the Tigers is going to be how he handles this Skubal thing. And I honestly don't know what the right answer is. If it's to keep him and try and make the playoff push, if it's to trade him and try and get the biggest haul back, but like whatever he does and whatever the outcome of that is going to be what determines whether or not he is successful as a GM with the Tigers. And I don't envy his position because there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to get this right.
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's already pressure on him now for just how he's been, rebuilding these Detroit teams. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the Skubal thing. Like, I don't know. To me, it's like if you attempt to make the playoff push and we don't make the playoffs, I think it's going to make Skubal's decision easy. Of like, I'm not coming back. You guys haven't shown that we can, progress in anything more than just maybe a first round playoff, if a playoff team at all.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, we trade him and get hopefully some good assets. But that also begs the question, like, with how ownership is and everything, like, will we actually trade Skubal for prospects and for the stuff that's going to help us for the future? Or are we going to shoot ourselves in the foot and lose Skubal and get nothing in return that's going to help us in the future? So that's where, like, I'm like right on the fence of like, we need to get rid of them, but we need to get rid of them the correct way with getting the assets and everything. So, I think even if we do make the playoffs this year, I don't think that's enough in Skubal's eyes to keep playing with us, because he definitely is a great player, obviously, but I think if he plays at these top teams, he'll definitely be getting World Series rings, maybe 2, 3, 4 rings. But I don't think that he's going to get that with Detroit. And I think Detroit knows that. And I think he knows that as well. So, I was at the point where I'm like, yeah, he is being kind of selfish as far as he doesn't want to play, more than 5 innings. He's kind of careful with his arm and everything. But like, honestly, like the more I look at it, like if I put myself in his shoes, like he's doing this the smart way. He's looking out for himself because unfortunately the Tigers have not been looking out for him. So, at the end of it, like it's a business. Like this guy wants to go win a championship, and yeah, we want to see him do it in a Tigers uniform, but it's not going to happen. And it's, it's the same thing. Like I wrote here, like with Larkin and with Jalen Duren, like these are our star athletes that we finally have in Detroit. Detroit's finally like on the map of like being a good sports city. And now we're potentially losing 3 star players in 1 year. Like that to me shows that like ownership in Detroit, there might need to be a change for all of the sports. I mean, we can't be losing 3 stars in 1 year because of contract issues. Like you guys got to figure that out earlier, or you have to build around what you have with Cade Cunningham, with Jalen Duren, Larkin, Skubal. Like there's plenty of, and there's players that have come and gone through Detroit that if we just built around them, I think we would have kept them the whole year, like their whole career. Calvin Johnson, I mean, I know he obviously retired as a Lion, but like if we would have built around him better, he'd have championships. Barry Sanders, like we could talk a whole episode of just players that have come through Detroit that have been successful on the other side. So yeah, I honestly think it's an ownership not only for, the Tigers and the Red Wings, but I think all 4 of our organizations need to be, looked at as far as GMs and ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that when it comes to ownership, the only thing I'll say in defense of them is that they have at least shown here, at least in recent years, a willingness to spend money. I know the Tigers for a while there after the Jim Leland era, while we were kind of waiting for Miguel Cabrera's salary to get off the books, like the Tigers were being a little cheap with what they were doing from their roster construction. But this offseason, they definitely sort of they opened up the checkbook and they kind of went after it here, which was good to see. Now, hindsight's kind of 2020, so knowing that the Valdez signing hasn't really been hasn't been as productive as the hope was, and some of the other pickups they had in the bullpen and things like that, some of the veteran arms they've brought in. The interesting thing with the Tigers, it seems like they struggle more with free agents than they do with the prospecting and like developing players internally. They seem to be doing well with that, but getting those veteran players to come in and kind of complete the puzzle is where they're struggling. But like, I think they're willing to spend money. Ownership is the issue, of course. Like you mentioned, like as the owners, they are picking who the GM is and things like that. So they still they bear some responsibility for that as well, because like they're choosing the Scott Harrises of the world, the Trajan Langdon. They're picking all the GMs here.
Yes.
Brad Holmes, like that's all them. Stevie Y, keeping him here for a second rebuild as the first rebuild has kind of failed. And I mean, I love Stevie Y. I grew up in the 90s. When I think about the Red Wings, I think about Steve Yzerman and Nick Lindstrom and Brendan Shanahan, Fedorov. Like those are the Red Wings to me. So I love Stevie Y, but at the same time, you can't deny the fact that we have missed the playoffs for so many seasons. And the fact that you do have, in the Red Wings case, Dylan Larkin being somebody who is the captain of this team and the current captain fighting with the guy who, I think of as the Red Wings captain is just, it's a tough spot to be in. And I don't think it damages Yzerman's legacy for like what he did as a player here, but he certainly is not adding to that legacy at the moment as a GM.
Yeah, no, for sure. The last thing I want to talk about with the MLB, obviously, is the reporting of a possible lockout next year. This kind of like for the Tigers, like, do you guys just go all in and hopefully do something? Because if this lockout lasts for a while, like, people are only going to remember you from the last time of how bad you were. Like, this lockout, I think, not only is going to like not hurt the Tigers, but it's going to disrupt the Tigers, but it's also obviously going to disrupt all of baseball. Like, I think there hasn't been a lockout. I believe the last time I saw it was like 2021 or something like that. And it didn't even last like into the season. It was only like off-season stuff. So this one will be like the first major one going into like the actual season itself. So, do you see this lockout happening? Do you think they'll reach an agreement? Like, I feel like sometimes like they just drag this out just to make news of it. But from what I'm seeing and hearing, like, it seems like this is going to be a big deal if this lockout does actually happen.
Yeah, for sure. And before I jump in, definitely shout out to Leslie and Ken inside of chat there. I see them. So thanks for tuning in on YouTube there.
Thank you, guys.
But for the lockout, I mean, I don't think anyone has like a crystal ball or knows the exact answer for what it's going to be. But it does seem like there is more of a likelihood of it happening than it not at this point, which is discouraging because, like you mentioned, there is the potential factor of, this could be this disappointing season could be the last Tiger memory we have for a little while this labor issue gets sorted out between the players in the league. But also, we talked about the need to get this Tarek Skubal situation right. Like that could impact teams' willingness to take on Skubal with like his contract. So it could hurt what those trade packages look like, any potential trade packages for Skubal. So it's kind of unclear to me exactly what the repercussions of the lockout would be. But I mean, we were just talking a little bit about hockey. If you look at what happened to hockey after it had, I think that's the most recent Major Four lockout that I can remember. And like, the fact that like completely nuked their TV deals, it took a long time, I feel, for like hockey to get back to where it was pre their lockout. And I know, baseball is considered to be like America's game. I feel like football has kind of dethroned it. Like the NFL seems like it's more like America's game in
Yeah, I can
general.
agree on that one.
But I think it would be detrimental to baseball as a whole to have a lockout. And I know there's a lot of financial things going on behind the scenes between owners and players and everything like that. It's kind of hard for me as a fan to really care too much about like their woes. Not saying that both sides don't have some good points, but like when you're talking about the amount of money that is in baseball and they're sitting here arguing over about how many millions of dollars like people are getting, it's like, especially like right now with everything that's going on and like the economy and things like that, it's like, it's hard for me to feel super sympathetic to them as they're looking to kind of do a self-inflicted wound and talk about, not having baseball. Like it seems, I know it's more complicated than it seems, but it's like, how can you not find a way to just be out there and play baseball? That's the whole thing. So if you don't do that, it seems like a failure to me. And I'm not sure what all the repercussions will be, but it doesn't seem like it would be good for baseball as a whole. Again, we both agreed that the NFL is more so America's game than the MLB. So if they don't play in 2027, that just is ceding more ground to the NFL and the NBA and the NHL and the other sports leagues to kind of take some of that viewership. And once they lose it, I don't know how much of that they're going to be able to claw back or how many years it will take for them to claw that back.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be tough for them. And, I feel like when basketball had their lockout, and I know it's been a while, like those guys could at least go play like rec league and all this other stuff. Like I can't think of like where these baseball players, I mean, maybe overseas and stuff, but like where would they kind of play to obviously keep in that shape and keep the momentum of playing baseball going? Like that might kind of ruin some people going into the next season. Like, yeah, obviously they'll stay in shape, they'll work out, they'll hit the gym, but like, to keep playing the sport of baseball, like, yeah, these guys get a couple months off, in the off season, but I feel like they would have to go play in these overseas or like these rec leagues, I guess, for baseball to kind of keep in that baseball shape. So it's going to be weird to see if it does end up happening. But we will have to see, like you said, with the viewerships and stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, like you said, once these other sports take viewers, it's tough for that sport to get them back. So, and like you said, with the NFL on the rise, I feel like there's a lot more NHL fans. Obviously, the NBA with all this stuff happening, like I feel like a lot of people are going to tune in for that. So, I think baseball needs to figure it out. Like you said, I mean, to us, millions of dollars sounds like a lot, but like, dude, if you guys are only 10 to 20 million difference, like, let's just cut that in half and get baseball going. Like, come on, that's not that much money to you guys at all.
Yeah, definitely seems like there should be a way for them to figure it out. And I mean, the one good news from it all, the silver lining might be that the Savannah Bananas in their baseball league,
that's a
they're
good point.
definitely a very, very fan-centric experience already. So I think the MLB has to be careful because, again, you're competing. I think the crazy thing with sports now, too, is that not only are you competing with the other major sports leagues, but like you're competing with Netflix for like all the content that's on there. Like people only have so much amount of time in their day to be able to devote to, whether it's sports or movies or TV shows and all that. So if you're taking yourself out of the equation, it's really risky. And you're not, like I said, with the Savannah Bananas, like that's a very fan centric league that, they prevent the resale of their tickets and things like that. They do a lot to try and help make the game more affordable and more approachable for fans. So like, I think the MLB needs to be careful. I don't think there's ever a world where you see the Savannah Bananas completely replacing the MLB, but I think it's just another example of how the MLB needs to really be careful how they handle this situation because it's, they're not the only game in town. So they need to be careful.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm actually glad you brought that up. Like, yeah, they're not competing with like minor league teams around the area, but in a sense they kind of are because if there's no Tigers games, like people are going to go to these other minor league games, and obviously some of them are, with the MLB, but the ones that aren't associated with the MLB, like they're going to get viewership, they're going to get fans coming in because people still want to watch baseball, but obviously if there's a lockout, they're not going to be able to. So no, I'm glad you brought up that point. Yeah, I mean, Savannah Bananas aren't going to take over to the MLB, but they could be crawling right up behind them. So
yeah, they could definitely see a boon from this. So they might be the most happy if an MLB lockout happens.
yeah, they're definitely sitting there like, hey, take as long as you need for sure. Let's move over to probably the sport that has the most off-season stuff happening, and that is the NBA. Let's just start with our Detroit Pistons. Obviously, we kind of briefly brought up Jalen Duren's name earlier in the episode. We brought in John Collins in a trade. So, from what I'm seeing out of all this stuff, I think Jalen Duren's gone. Whether it's a sign and trade or what we're going to get for him, but I think with the addition of John Collins, the departure of us trading Beef Stew, Tobias Harris leaving, like, yeah, there's money, but I think we're gonna go after somebody big. And Kevin Durant, I've heard his name in the spotlight here. That's a name. I know a lot of people were not happy with me saying that if LeBron came to the Pistons. Yeah, no, I can't get behind LeBron coming to Detroit, but Kevin Durant, I can kind of get behind. I wasn't a fan when he did his whole left OKC to go to Golden State, but I'm okay with Kevin Durant coming here. It's obviously going to cost us a lot, but what do you see with all these trades happening for Detroit? We'll start with that. Like, do you think Duren is on the move, or do you think we're kind of making some room to bring Duren back? I know with Kevin Huerter, we signed him, which I want to get your input on that, because I guess you can pay a guy $27 million to keep the seat warm for the next guy, but I don't know what's going on with him. But yeah, overall with the Detroit Pistons, how do you feel? Do you think we're in a rebuild?
I don't think we're in a rebuild necessarily, but it does seem like we are very much in a reconfiguration of this team. Between John Collins and then, Duncan Robinson, there's been some talk about whether or not he's going to be traded. You've already mentioned Tobias Harris leaving. And for me, I think that one's going to be potentially one of the more interesting things because, I think Tobias did fade a little bit there in the playoffs, but like he was giving us a lot of, I think, really great value for what, being that like veteran guy on the team, being Unk there, helping them find ways.
Yeah, keeping all the young guys like in check. Like,
yeah. So like I think it's really hard to gauge like what losing him is going to mean for this team, because I think he was kind of like one of those foundational guys. Beef Stew too. He we're going to definitely lose some of that rim protection that he brought to the table. But then, by replacing him with John Collins, we are getting a little bit more of the ability to space the floor, get some additional shooting. So, that's why I don't think it's necessarily a rebuild, because I don't think we're trying to put exactly the same team back out there with like different pieces. I think they're trying to adjust the approach and like the potential offense that you'll be seeing a little. I think they're trying to get more of that shooting, more of that floor spacing. So it's more of a retooling, I think, than a full-on rebuild. But I think the big question, when it comes to Duren, is I think it's, is he the Robin to Cade's Batman? And it doesn't seem like the Pistons are all in on that idea, which I think is why you continue to hear things about, I know before everything happened with the Giannis trade, there was talk about Tyler Hero potentially coming, Reeves from the Lakers coming over. There's been a lot of names that have been linked to the Pistons to kind of come over and be that the second guy to Cade. And in a lot of those situations, I think Duren is someone who gets signed and trade in a lot of those deals to acquire that second guy. And it almost seems like he definitely wants the max contract, and it doesn't seem like the Pistons are willing to give that to him. And honestly, based off of his playoff performance, like I would also agree that
I'm fine with it. Use that money somewhere else.
So yeah, I'm not upset with the idea about signing, using him in a sign and trade. But but I think it's going to be interesting. It definitely feels like they're still looking for that second star to bring in to really anchor things down with Cade. But it's going to be interesting to see if it is Durant, if he is that guy, or if there's somebody else that they do bring in. Because we've heard a lot of names this offseason, and obviously they're not going to bring us in and tell us all the conversations they're having with other teams and like talk about the packages that were proposed and things like that. But it's kind of crazy, especially when you look at the Jaylen Brown trade. What they got in return for him. It's like, well, if surely we could have matched that type of offer.
Oh yeah,
Jaylen Brown here to the Pistons. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher, a little bit frustrating that if he could be moved for that, why couldn't the Pistons make a little bit better of an offer to bring him here to Detroit?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, that was one of the points I was thinking. Like, yeah, Jaylen Brown got traded for Paul George, 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. Like, okay, I get the picks. You're building for the future, but like, no offense, Paul George is a good player, but like, he's not the Paul George that he used to be. Like when he was with Indiana and a little bit with OKC. Like, he's not that Paul George anymore. So, I kind of thought to myself, after I sat down and looked at the trade, like I have a feeling that there was a little bit of had to be some locker room behind the scenes issues maybe that were occurring. I know Jaylen and Jason Tatum were kind of like the 1-2 people there, but like, there's always those guys want to be the number one. And after a while being number 2, like, Jaylen Brown played very well with Jason Tatum out. So maybe he kind of, stepped up and said, look, I'm tired of being the number 2. I just proved this season that I can be that number 1. And which is fine. But yeah, that definitely to me, like Detroit, we could have gave them Jalen Duren, throw in a couple second round picks and maybe a first round pick, and we'd have Jaylen Brown. So
yeah.
It's kind of nice to see, and I keep knocking the whole LeBron thing, but it's nice to see like the LeBrons, the Kevin Durant's, the Giannis's, like those names being talked about potential spots for Detroit. I don't know. I don't really know who else is out there that I could say like, okay, we're going into the summer league, so we're kind of like a month or so, couple months out of the season, like. Who is going to be that trade piece that we're going to use with Durant or for Durant to maybe get something in return? So I'm hoping that it is Kevin Durant with all the talks and everything. But the one thing that scares me is they're going to want, the Ron Hollands, the Thompson, like they're going to want a lot back for Kevin Durant. And they were talking about like they're probably going to want Thompson to pair up with his brother in Houston, which I forgot about that he is over there. So that I think, definitely will catch Houston's eye with that. But yeah, there's a lot to unwrap with the Detroit Pistons, and obviously LeBron still has not decided where he's going to land, which I kind of want to talk to you about that. Like, do you think he makes a decision like within a month or so, or do you think he kind of lets, which is smart, I'll give him that, is let free agency die down, let all the trades die down, and then spotlight's on you, man. Like, are we having the decision part 2? Like, I don't know. I remember when he did that for Miami, and it was kind of cool. But, like, is there a decision part 2 coming, or is it like the writing's on the wall? Like, go back to Cleveland and do what you got to do and hang them up in the locker and get the hell out of the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what he does. I think that, to your point, I think he is definitely in a position where he can kind of pick and choose. If he wanted to hang him up today and not play again, like there's not a whole lot left for him to accomplish. So, outside of waiting for the right situation and potentially going to chase another ring, like it's totally up to him if that's something he wants to do. So, it's kind of selfishly, because he has been such a big part of the NBA for a large portion of my life. Like, I would love to see him just keep out there and playing, just because it's been so long since I've seen an NBA without LeBron out there. But
yeah, no, that's a fair point.
I know at some point in time he is going to have to hang it up, and The only thing I can hope for is that when he does finally decide to call it a career, that he doesn't go out there and have, I definitely love that Verlander came back and is with the Tigers and everything like that. But obviously he's been a healthy, he's been not a healthy scratch. He's been scratched from a lot of his starts, and so it was great to have that sort of reunion and have that moment of nostalgia bringing him back on the team. But like, I would hate to see that something similar happen to like LeBron, where he goes back to Cleveland, or he just comes back and, he just finds himself perpetually injured and doesn't really, at that point in time, it would have just been better to say goodbye. So
hang it up. Yep.
I hope whatever he decides that it is something where he gets kind of the send off that he deserves, as opposed to something where he's just, perpetually on the injured list.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you bring up a good point. I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but the NBA will be different when he does decide to hang it up. Obviously me being a big NBA fan, like, yeah, he's been that face of the franchise for as long as I can remember. So, and it's kind of sad because like some of these young guys that are coming up, like, I remember when I used to be like, dude, I know the draft classes from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, I can name you the top 10. Like, even these guys this year, like, I'm sorry. And they're great players. Don't get me wrong. I've seen some of these kids when they've played in college, but like, I'm so like, I'm going to be honest. We're old. We're old. We are getting to that point that like, I don't even like recognize some of these star kids anymore. Like, obviously Cooper Flag, like I know him and stuff like that, but like, like I said, I used to be able to know like a lot of these draft classes, and it's kind of tough that like, yeah, all of like the Kevin Durant's, the LeBrons of the world, like these guys are getting up there. Curry's like, when Curry retires, the league's going to be totally different. Like, I only know Golden State Warriors of the Steph Curry era. Like, and I'm not even a fan of Golden State. Like, those are the teams and stuff that like, and the players that you were like, wow, it seems like they just got in the league and they're maybe 5 to 7 years, like to the point where they're going to be gone. So
yeah,
NBA is going to look different in a couple of years, but with these rookies, since we're talking about them, how do you think Detroit did with the draft? I know they moved up to get a Corey at 17, and then obviously at 53 we got Ugana. From what I've been hearing, they're good players. The Corey guy, he's fast. He could score. I think he was like top 2 behind the Boozer brother in scoring and everything like that. So I'm excited to see that. I think he'll fit right in with Cade. And then our other guy that we got, he's supposed to be a really good defender. Like, can block pretty much everything. So with the Duran being on that fence, it's good to bring him in. And he can hopefully get under Paul Reed's wing and kind of learn from Paul Reed, because Paul Reed is a monster, and I'm excited to see him get some more minutes this year with obviously the departure of Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think, the picks they made, I definitely, to your point about being older, I think it's harder to keep up with the draft class, so I don't have a super strong understanding of them and like what they're bringing to the table. I know too, like one of the big things that's going to change is the amount of minutes they're playing and things like that. As you become a starter in the NBA, the amount of playing time you're going to see in a game is going to be up substantially from when you were in college. So it'll give them more of an opportunity, I think, to shine and show some of those things that we've seen. I know one of the things that he was going to be working on here in the offseason, their first round pick, was his shooting was something that they said that he'd be working on here in the summer league and things like that. So, which, it feels like that's kind of the default for any NBA play over. Oh, what would you work on this offseason? Oh, just my shooting.
Shooting. Okay. Well, you've been doing good in college. Why are we going to change it here? But
yeah, so
they do that sometimes.
they do sometimes decide to redo the mechanics, which seems like a stretch, but yeah, I mean, I'm not disappointed with the picks that they made, and I think they could definitely be guys that come in and contribute. I think the more disappointing thing to me, and we've already been talking about how we feel like the Pistons are kind of looking for that second guy to add. The fact that they made the draft picks instead of using them in some package to go ahead and get that their top choice.
Get that, yep.
That's, I think, in a perfect world, they would have been able to use that draft capital, I think, to get that number one target for the offseason. Because it seems like at this point, because they have been linked to so many players, that they had a plan and it just didn't, maybe it didn't work out. They didn't get that number one guy, and they've kind of been readjusting the strategy as time has gone on. So, overall, that would have been just my only thing is if they could have found some way to go ahead and get their top choice. I think I would have been more okay this season if they had gone after that veteran player as opposed to trying to add through the draft. But I think the guys they did add should be guys that do contribute some meaningful minutes for the team. So that is a positive.
Yeah, for sure. And summer league for the Pistons, I believe, starts July 9th. So I'm going to be sitting there focusing on those to see how our young guys do. Let's land on. We briefly talked about him earlier, but the Yzer plan. So I don't know what the Yzer plan consists of, but it's definitely not a plan that I feel it gets an A plus by any stretch of the means. Obviously, like you said, Yzerman, great hockey player, will go down as one of the greats. GM wise, he's definitely not going to the Hall of Fame for that. So who do you think this falls on as far as responsibility? Do you think it's an Yzerman thing? Do you think it's ownership? I know we, tapped into that a little bit. And this really is his biggest test with Larkin kind of walking into his office and saying, look, I know you're a good hockey player, but you can't figure out this GM stuff, so I'm out. And it's tough because I see where Larkin's coming from. Like, everybody was just ripping on the guy. Take the C off. You can't play, blah, 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 blah. So I get it. He got fed up enough and he's like, all right, I'm going to go prove people wrong. But on the other hand, like, I hate to say it, Larkin can't start on another team. Like, he's not playing that first line. It's sad to see because he is a good player, but what do you see with this Red Wings team? Like, do you think with Larkin potentially being traded, do you think the dominoes fall with your Mo Seider, your Lucas Raymond, DeBrincat? Like, are these guys going to be guys here in a couple of years that are like, hey, I'm knocking on Yzerman's door next because he still hasn't changed anything? I mean, we're going, 10 plus years now not making the playoffs?
Yeah, it is. It is a long playoff drought here, and I think ultimately, if I'm laying the blame at anyone's feet, it is going to be more so on Yzerman than on Chris Ilitch. I mean, Chris Ilitch has decided to keep Yzerman through all of this, so there is definitely there's plenty of blame to go around, and even to the players that have been brought in and have been playing. The collapses that we see every spring has been pretty. It's become a thing for them, and that definitely goes back to the players. But it's just this seems like a really it's a no-win situation, honestly, because the fact that this did come out publicly, everything that's going on with Larkin, whether they trade him, and it's hard to believe that they're going to get a trade package where they're going to be getting back. To your point, I don't think that Larkin is a top 3 guy on most teams. I think he is probably on a Stanley Cup championship team, he is a quality number 2 center. But like, if we aren't getting at least that back, like the Red Wings aren't going to be a better team. Like, losing Larkin is going to hurt them. Even if they're bringing back like young players or assets for him, like they're not going to be better this upcoming season because of that. And then the fact that they haven't signed DeBrincat because he's on to the last year of his contract, like Yzerman either needs to trade him and get value, or he needs to sign him and lock him in long term because he is the best player on the team.
Yeah.
Patrick Kane, it doesn't seem like he's going to be coming back, that he's going to be walking in free agency. I've hearing rumors that a lot of teams are considering offer sheets for Edvinsson, which would also put us in an interesting bind as well. And so you just have all of these different things that are coalescing together, and it just right now I don't see what the path is for Yzerman. I don't see what the Yzer plan is, and it just it's disappointing. It seems like we are heading into a second rebuild with him at the helm, and he's just like he's not even willing to commit to that rebuild. So we're like having it seems like this next season is going to be well, we're in a rebuild, but it's not a rebuild yet, and it's hard to get excited about what is happening with the Red Wings.
Yeah, and it's not even like a commit thing. It's like also you have to like just admit that
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing. You're trying to figure it out, but like it seems like every time, reporters bring up a question like that, he just kind of dodges it and he's like, "Well, we're working on it." Like, dude, it's okay to say that like no, we're in a full-blown rebuild again. Like obviously you can't just come out and say shit's hitting the fan, but like shit's hitting the fan. Like you just have to admit that. And like I don't know. Like I said, he's a great hockey player, but like 10 years of no playoffs is not good at all. I mean, it's crazy to think that I was 19 years old the last time they made the playoffs. Like I remember Joe Louis Arena. I remember the 25 years in a row. Like that seems like it was just yesterday. And nope, we haven't had playoff hockey there's been no playoff hockey in LCA.
Yeah.
Like
they need to take Hockey Town off the ice until we get back to the playoffs.
Yes, yes. I know Eric from the Sports Reel would love to hear that. Yeah. It's not Hockey Town. Like it's not, and it's sad to see. I honestly think it's because there's too many former Red Wings players in the front office. Like I get it. You don't want to tarnish your friendship relationship with these guys, but like, again, there's a difference between business and friendship. Like, don't bring your best friends in here if you can't figure out like, hey, like I unfortunately, we're still good, hopefully, but I gotta shit can you. You gotta go. Door's over there. So that's what I think is ruining as far as the Red Wings is there's too many former players that are being buddies right now instead of being partners to try to figure out and make this business a better business.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. To your point, you need to have that like self-evaluation and be able to say, hey, this, it's fine to bring in, your old player friends and give them in positions, but like clearly the results speak for themselves and things aren't going well. So like you just need to be able to recognize it, admit it, and then work to fix it. You can't just like keep staying the path when it's clearly not working and just expect things to magically get better.
And that's with any business. Like, I've seen it before. Like, and people talk about it all the time. Like, you obviously, you start at the bottom with these guys, and you're trying to all work your way up to the top. Eventually, like, everybody wants to be the top guy, and like, friendships do get ruined, and maybe a couple friendships in the Red Wings organization might have to be broken in order for the Red Wings success. I don't want to see that happen, but we need to see success. So somebody's got to figure it out. And really it's just take accountability. Like I get it from a PR standpoint, you got to say some of the things that they say, but like really, if you're just honest with the fans and be like, look, I can't figure this out. And I think, maybe it is time that I should go. Maybe he should just step down. I mean, you could still work in the organization, just don't be a GM. That would be fine. I mean, some people, it's the same thing like with football, there's great offense coordinators out there. They go to move into a head coach position and they're absolutely terrible. That doesn't mean they're a horrible coach. They're just a really good offense or defense coordinator.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what he's got to do as far as the office. Like, hey, that office might be nice with your name on it, but down the hallway, we have a janitor's closet that you might be able to just hang out there for a little bit until you can figure that out and then maybe move back up. So lot going on in Detroit, lot going on in sports. I mean, obviously just in that hour, I feel like we covered so much and there is still so much more to do, but like, what are you looking forward, for in these next couple months leading up to the seasons for these Detroit teams? Are you excited for it? Are you getting a little nervous to see kind of where some of these Detroit teams land?
Yeah, I mean, I think the toughest part about everything is, they're going to be based off the timelines, right? Like they're going to have to make some of these moves. But then even after they've made the moves, we won't really fully be able to appreciate the outcome, for few months even after that. So it's the waiting period is going to be going on for quite some time. So there's definitely the anticipation of like what is that let's see what the depth charts are going to look like. But then even once we see what they look like a great example with the Tigers, they brought in Valdez and Verlander, and it was like, oh sweet, this rotation is going to be like the best in the American League. And then okay, well maybe not so much in actuality. So I think that is my biggest concern. Like the Tigers have been my cautionary tale, because they did make such investments and it just didn't pan out. So I'm definitely excited to see what moves the Pistons, the Red Wings, and even what happens with the Lions. But unfortunately, until we actually get to the games and we start to see the outcome there, it's one of those things where it might look good on paper, but we just don't know what it's going to actually turn into on the field.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go and I have you do all your socials and stuff, I don't know if you saw the score of the USA-Belgium game.
I did see what the final ended up being there.
4-1.
Yeah, they
Damn.
They got a little shell shock there in the second half.
Well, it looks like I'll be looking at social media to tell me who wins the World Cup, because I don't think I'm gonna watch anymore.
Yeah, it's
wow. Did not see that coming.
It was not a good round for host nations, so that means Canada, the U.S., and Mexico all got eliminated in this round. So it was it's rough. I will say the team that's probably I'm going to be continuing to watch is Norway. I don't know if you've seen any of Norway's games, but
I haven't seen any of them. I know they have there's a top player on the team that everybody talks about.
Haaland. That guy he's a real interesting dude. I know.
All right, I'll have to follow him.
It's if you're looking for some reason to stay invested in the World Cup, I recommend checking out Norway. It's pretty.
I will have to check them out. Well, obviously that ended on a bad foot. I was hoping USA would have pulled that out at the end of this episode. Kevin, thank you again for being on. Obviously, I will definitely have you on more in the future, for sure, when NFL season starts, because you're that sports or NFL podcast guy. So I'm excited to hear throughout the season what goes on in your head, to see where the Lions and where this the NFL kind of goes in general. So plug your stuff and let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find the Lions Grid on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I think Facebook is probably the channel where you'll probably find the most fans and all of that. So, but we're just the Lions Grid. Again, you can on all the major platforms. And I know Cody has the QR code up there. So yeah, if you are interested, I know we have a lot of older content up there, but then I think there's probably a strong likelihood that there'll be some new content coming this NFL season too. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll be definitely back at it, reporting on all things Lions and the NFL. So
yes, I'm definitely excited. Hopefully some things work. But yeah, you're definitely coming back during the NFL season, because you're my football guy. So I kind of want to pick your brain and maybe see some things that I don't see, or kind of what you hear about it. So Kevin, again, thanks for being on. It's always a pleasure having you on. And thank you everybody for tuning in this week. Next week, this time, Monday, 9 p.m., July 13th, we have Don't Know Grit. He is another Lions podcast. So that one's probably going to be focused more on NFL, and there's a lot of obviously Detroit news for the Lions. So I can't wait to pick his brain and see what he's been seeing and what he kind of hopes the Lions can do this year. So thank you guys again for tuning into another live episode of Catch Up with Cody. And we were joined by Kevin today. Check out all of his social media. Obviously, he is a big reason that I did start a podcast, because I kind of learned from him and everything. So check out his stuff. Thank you guys again for hanging out. Peace.